We all owe the Clippers an apology because they have done the unthinkable. After they started the season with a 6-21 record, everybody roasted Ty Lue when he said this.
Our main goal is try to be 35-20 the rest of the way.
And guess what? They've gone 35-17 since. Here's why this was actually unthinkable. They are the first NBA team ever to start at least 15 games under 500 and go back over 500. And what made their terrible record so much worse was that OKC owns their pick. So the Clippers were shaping up to be a lottery team in a generational draft, and OKC, of all teams, was going to get their pick. And they weren't just losing off the court. Don't forget, this team is being investigated for salary cap circumvention. They waived Chris Paul in the middle of the night, in the middle of his retirement tour. And just when they were starting to turn it around, Harden and Zubac both got traded. Kawhi himself literally said it was over. But somehow, after all of that, the Clippers are in playoff contention. So how did such a disaster of a season turn around? Most importantly, Kawhi has been healthy and playing at a first-team All-NBA level. And Darius Garland has been a really great Harden replacement. He's 10 years younger, and his speed and off-ball movement can help create a less predictable offense. It also helps that he's got a nice roster of athletic wings around him to throw lobs or kick out to. DJJ, Mathurin, who himself is a bucket. Ty Lue has done a great job maximizing the roster as well. But it all comes back to Kawhi, who at 34 years old and after several serious injuries is somehow playing some of the best basketball of his career, and proving everybody who had counted the Clippers out wrong, including himself.
You heard nobody but Coach and Coach Lue had the Clippers turning around. So Coach put so much action on the Clippers over the course of the season that MGM literally cut him off forever ago. He hasn't been able to put in a Clippers slip in a long time. But that's okay, because if it goes down, Coach is more than good, right? So we've had Sixers versus Clippers. Coach initially thought Sixers over Nuggets, but likes it better next year. Still not 100% sold. They're not just running that right here, right now. I mean, the Nuggets are sitting at the 3 seed, but Coach still feels really good about Sixers over Clippers, even though both teams are in the play-in tournament. But you heard what it took for the Clippers to get there, right? Literally a miracle already. There's no way they're not the best team in the play-in in the West. They do have to win back-to-back games to qualify, and they'll certainly go against the number 1 seed. But who's sitting there? You heard it, the Thunder, who they owe an ass-whooping. Oh, you thought you were going to get a lottery pick from us? Try an ass-whooping in the playoffs to end your repeat chances, right? So Coach thinks Clippers smoking hot. Coach loved the Darius Garland trade immediately. Coach hates Harden, right? Let him ruin the Cavaliers. Darius way better, right? Of course, Coach told you they had our boy Darius on the Clippers a long time ago, who was top pick, does the Knucklehead podcast with his boy Q Rich, right? So we like that connection. Kawhi, of course, hitting the crazy buzzer beater with all the bounces over Embiid. So Coach definitely still loves this matchup, and here's how he thinks we're going to get there. So first off, everybody's trying to scare you with Embiid's latest injury. What is it, right? So let's backtrack it all the way to the beginning, right? So Embiid going into the draft, huge concerns that his back will never be right, coming out of Kansas. That's why he fell to the Sixers number 3. Instead of going number 1, which he definitely would have if he was healthy, right? Sixers trade him. He gets a Liz Frank injury, right? Has to have surgery on his foot. Doesn't heal right. He misses a whole season. He has to do it again, another surgery. Misses a whole nother season, right? And same time, of course, Sixers wasting all sorts of picks, taking another center, Jahlil Okafor, taking another center, Nerlens Noel, right? Of course, both busting out. And taking 2 guys that can't shoot later on, Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, right, both busting out a number 1 pick. You let a really solid, superstar player in Tatum go to the Celtics, right? So the Sixers just horribly managed. Embiid plagued with injuries, right? He starts getting into the playoffs and stuff. So what happens first time? Breaks his face in a concussion, right? Has to wear a mask. Next year, knee problems, and he's sick. 2020, I don't know what the bubble has to do with it exactly, right? But 2021, he tears his meniscus. 2022, breaks his face again and tears a ligament in his thumb, right? Sprains his knee in 2023, has Bell's palsy, which is symptoms kind of like a stroke in 2024, so he's got neurological issues. They missed the playoffs entirely last year, right? And this year, I'm supposed to be scared of appendicitis, right? When it happened, we're like at least 5 days or something removed. Coach has the exact timeline for you, right? But I'm supposed to be scared of a little bit of appendicitis. My buddy was 100% good to go after 2 weeks when he had his appendix out. So don't pay attention to that 13. That is nothing. I guess that's just today, right? So Coach was trying to mark when he's going to be back, right? So the first playoff game, the 19th, absolutely not going to be there. Now, they don't have game 2 and 3 scheduled yet, but Coach looked back to last year, and they had games 2 and 3 3 days apart. Now, that feels a bit long. I think it might be a total of like 5 days apart, maybe even just 4, right? But assuming they're following that timeline again, even if it is a day shorter and Embiid has to come back on the 24th, that's 2 weeks removed too. He should be good there. Certainly should be good for game 3, which would be the first must-win game of the series. You know, if they're playing the Celtics, you expect them to drop 1 and 2 on the road, right? So Embiid would just have to come back, defend home court for 2 games, go back to Boston, most likely lose, come back to Philly, win, and then anything can happen in game 7, right, even though you're in Boston. Right, so Embiid could just have a monster performance. He's that type of player that if he's completely on and wants it, nobody can stop him, even the Celtics. So I'm not particularly scared of the Celtics, although it does feel like we'd rather avoid them and try to get healthy, but I don't think that's the way it's going to go. I think they're actually feeding us to the Celtics, which would be we win this game, secure our spot in the play-in tournament. If we lose to the Magic, we get another shot to get into the play-in. Actually, now that I think about it, I forgot about all that. Right, So if we lose, we play the winner of Heat Hornets. And if you'll remember, the Hornets, they have LaMelo Ball who did the 6-7 thing, right? And the Sixers are being urged to sign Lonzo Ball, which was taken 1 pick before we took Jahlil Okafor. You know, Lonzo would have been a much better pick for us, especially needing a guard so bad. It's kind of like the Lakers screwed us 2 years in a row. They took like D'Angelo Russell. The other year too. I think that was the Okafor one, and Alonzo might have been like the Nerlens year or something like that, or maybe he went the pick after Ben Simmons or something like that. I can't entirely remember, but I know that we were really close on both of them. And so, you know, Lonzo coming in, he'd make up for a little bit of that. You know, he's just going to be a bench guy, but we traded Jared McCain and just cut campaign, and they ain't it. So I'm not worried about them at all. Coach already was liking the idea of opening up a spot for Iverson. You know, they're missing a small guard so bad. We got the best one ever sitting right there, 49 years old. You look at the way his career went down, like he was begging teams to run him out into the ground, and even busted-ass teams like the Grizzlies are just like, we're too good to play you meaningless minutes. Like, what were they, competing for a championship or some shit? So, like, you know, all those teams were doing us a favor blackballing Iverson in retrospect if he comes back, because he certainly would have beaten his body to death the way he played, right? But, you know, he actually pretty much still went out in good shape. It was mostly like drinking problems and depression, right? He just got sober last year, so he could be an ace in their back pocket. More logical, you know, sensible option seems to be Lonzo. Right now you could have Lonzo versus LaMelo in the play-in tournament. If we beat the Hornets, we've got that would be the Celtics in the first round, I think, right? Yeah. So that's how because I think the Celtics are number 1, the Pistons are number 2. I got to double check. Let's just go NBA standings. I know the Pistons are number 1. So yeah, this gives us the Pistons in the first round. So like the only reason I think we're getting them isn't because I was trying to avoid the Celtics so much, was it just makes sense they might do the ball versus ball thing. And the Hornets are so goofy and fruity. Like, we would totally smoke them. I'm not worried about them at all. You know, I wouldn't want to play the Heat, right? But we'd definitely smoke the Hornets in the play-in. We could definitely beat the Magic too, but the Magic are not a bad team, and they just lost to the Celtics the last game of the season, so that might have been some foreshadowing. They're about to go against each other. Maybe that's why yeah, maybe the Magic actually aren't as geared up to when you say you don't want to face the Celtics, you just beat them or something goofy. You know what I mean? Like, long story short, as the Sixers, I'm not scared of the Pistons or the Celtics. But like I said, I do like the idea of the ball versus ball. That would give us the Pistons in the first round. Let's see how that all shakes out. Okay, so Pistons in the first round. Okay, so Coach has us going against the Celtics. and his favorite scenario. Let's go the other one. That would give us the Cavs in round 2 or the Raptors. Either one of those makes sense. James Harden, get revenge on him for being a buster. Get back at the Raptors. We got Nick Nurse. Either one of those feel good. If it ends up being against the Celtics, move on to the next round. We got some beef with the Knicks. The Hawks, we had the ridiculous Ben Simmons pass. And this cat here had to wear the mask just like Embiid, so they can compare the mask things. He was also teammates with the Ball brothers, so he can talk about how he's buddy with Lonzo or whatever, right? So there's a lot going on there. I don't for whatever reason, I think they want the Hawks instead of the Knicks to go up against the Sixers. And teams like the Knicks and the Celtics, if we really do have the Sixers going back to back, you could totally save them for next year. You know what I mean? But either way, right? So looking at it, as far as how it would go against the Celtics, like I said, they would drop game 2 and game 3, 4-7, right? That's probably true against the Pistons as well. So either way, before you're moving on. And then in the West here, the Clippers, right? They owe the Thunder an ass whooping anyways, and they can't do better than the 8 seeds. So they're slotted in to smoke them. Lakers, Rockets could go either way. You either get all LA or you get the 2 teams that used to be in San Diego. Either way, that's solid. Nuggets, Timberwolves. Definitely got to go Nugs there. Nugs, Spurs. That feels like a really good series. Portland and Phoenix are both scary teams to me. That's why I like that either one of them has to face the Spurs. First, one of them is going to eliminate the other, and the other has to go against the Spurs. I trust the Spurs, so I love that. I don't have to worry about Portland or Phoenix, in my opinion. Right, so Spurs, Nuggets, that feels pretty solid, even with the whatever type of injury concerns with Jokic, right? So then that would move you on. So down here, if we lose, this would be if we win, right? So if we win, we would go against the Hawks, meaning we win the play-in, right? So we win the play-in, we get the 7 instead of the 8 seeds, so we're facing the Celtics instead of the Pistons. If we beat the Celtics, that would have us against the Hawks, so that would give us the 6-7 thing. So that's a little bit but I don't care as much about that. I think the other script's a little bit better, personally. But either way, and then in the West, right, have the Clippers beat the Rockets or the Lakers, Nuggets beat the Spurs. That gives you Clippers, Nugs. Right, Kawhi versus Jokic, that's pretty nice. Either one would be looking enticing with Embiid on the other side. And then for the Eastern Conference Finals, right, it would either be, if we're at the top of the bracket, it's either going to be the Hawks or the Celtics waiting there. Or if we're at the bottom of the bracket, it's going to be the Cavs. I don't think we're going to get the Pistons. It just doesn't seem that exciting. To be honest, if you got James Harden there, right? It could, you got a lot on the list. Is it Embiid finally getting there? Is it Harden finally getting there? Is Harden going against his former Clippers? Is Embiid going against his rival Jokic? And you end up getting Embiid and Kawhi. You know what I mean? So I just think that one's got the most enticing narratives to it. But honestly, I could see it shaking out a bunch of different ways in our favor, which I like a lot better than having to be it needs to be this and then this and then this. The Clippers don't have a lot of wiggle room other than I think they can beat pretty much anybody over there. You know what I mean? They're past pretty much slotted in. They got their first round matchup, we already know. But the Sixers, like I said, playing in the Celtics the first round feels really bad. But what I like about the Sixers team is everybody's counting them out, and that's the only time Philly teams are ever good for you, is if nobody wants them except you. I promise. Nobody. That's why do you think they wear that dog mask shit in Philly? Coach is the only one telling you Nick Foles was the dude, right? So this is, if right or wrong, this is the type of position we want to be in because, all the other teams, Celtics, if it's that or whatever, you're host anyway. You know what I mean? They're not going to pay you that much. We got a team that has potential to be a lot better than everybody thinks they are, right? And everybody knows they can be a lot better. They're just worried about chemistry. They're worried about health. Well, what if we actually finally catch a break? Coach, appreciate you.